New Year.
Happy New Year.
Is it okay to say Happy New Year on the 18th of the month? It is 2023. I always use the first month, usually say the previous year, but that's 2023. Welcome to the Bartow History Museum's monthly Lunch and Learn program. It's our first of the year. We're glad to have you out for this inaugural 2023 event.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll introduce our speaker, but Linda's here to talk about Allatoona Dam, which also relates to our current temporary exhibit. If you have not had a chance to see that, spend some time after the program to check out that exhibit on the history of Allatoona Dam. And that exhibit is sponsored by Grand Valley Brewing Company. Anyone heard of Grand Valley?
I still have to go there.
And Central Bank of Georgia. If you know the folks at any of those places, please share our appreciation. Actually, I think our representative just walked in the room.
Well, we're all going to go now after lunch.
Would you like to say a few words about Grand Valley?
Yeah, we're just one of the local brewery out here, and but we open at 4 today, so and we're just happy to be a part of the community and give back and keep Carter people great. So
Thank you.
Like I said, you all now know Grand Valley, the Blue Sky outfit and the Central Bank of Georgia share our appreciation to those folks about supporting the history museum. Our next evening lecture will be on January 26th. That's a Thursday night. It'll be at 7 o'clock here in this room. Dr. Terry Palace, who's an archaeologist at Kansas State University, will be here to talk about one of his ongoing projects here in Cartersville. It's a late Mississippian era excavation that he's been a part of here. He's going to tell us the latest findings that they had last fall.
I've been and participated in one of his digs. That was a lot of fun. Very fascinating. Yeah.
And then our next Lunch and Learn on February the 15th, Dr. Alicia Wheeler will be here. Dr. Wheeler is the niece of Dr. Susie Wheeler, who is a longtime educator here in Bartow County and is instrumental in the preservation and restoration of the Noble Hill School in Pasco. And she just recently completed her dissertation on the life of Dr. Susie Wheeler. It's going to be here to share the story of her aunt, that story here of education in Bartow County. Come on in, we'll find you a seat.
I know where my seat is. I'm on the front row.
There's more information you can find on these and other programs here at the museum on our website, bartowhistorymuseum.org. Follow us on social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram. You can always find that information there as well. Well, without further ado, let me introduce our speaker today. We have Linda Purvis here with us. Linda is a natural resource specialist with the Corps of Engineers. She's in charge of managing the historic and cultural sites down within the bounds of the Corps property on the shores of Lake Allatoona. Today she will touch on the preservation of historic properties, archaeological sites, grave sites, repatriation of Native American objects, and the curation of the collections that they have up there. So please join me in welcoming Linda Purvis.
Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining for the Lunch and Learn. And before we get started, I just want to let you guys know that I want this informal. I want it interactive. I've talked to several of you already, and I've learned that you are lifers, and I'm sure we have a lot of history buffs out there. So I'm going to tell you, don't wait for the end of the slideshow to ask questions. Raise your hand or feel free to participate and help me out, because as some of you already know and I've told you, I am a biologist by trade, and I also do the habitat restoration and pollinator program over at Allatoona, in addition to our cultural resources and historic properties. So this has been a continuous learning experience for me leading this project. But if there's anybody out there that wants to chime in, please feel free at any time. And so I'll say it again without further ado. We'll get started. So I just want to give you a really quick background on initial laws that protect cultural and historic sites on federal lands, because it's kind of important to know, because it ties into what we do with this program at Allatoona. So the very first law that was enacted was the Antiquities Act of 1906. And this was basically general protection for general land of cultural and natural resources that were found on Indian lands as well as federal lands. And then if we want to, we can just jump right to what I like to just call NHPA, because it's easier than saying National Historic Preservation Act of 1966. This act, this law went into act based on federal agencies needing to evaluate any kind of impact that is done on any federal funded or permitted projects that's found on historic and cultural properties. And I guess you could call it the Bible of that law, is found in section 106. And it basically tells you, do you qualify? Does this land, is there any historical or cultural properties that are found in this location that you're trying to work on? And if you meet criteria, and then from there, if you are actually permitted, you have to follow a stringent criteria of following, so we help preserve and protect those areas. And so that kind of falls into here at Allatoona and what we do as well. Just little tidbits. The act also created the National Register of Historic Places, as well as it provides the list of National Historic Landmarks, as well as state historic preservation offices throughout the United States. And so we'll dive into the background of cultural and historic sites at Allatoona. We have our own little Holy Grail Bible. It's the Historic Properties Management Plan. Each project, which we call our locations for the Corps of Engineers, actually has this guide, and this is based off of archaeologists. In our case, we actually had archaeologists from the University of Georgia go out and survey and assess as early back as into the 1940s areas around the lake that have cultural and historic references. And to date, it's been revised several times, and we are still finding things to date around the lake. We have over 1,064 sites that have been surveyed. And a lot of those are submerged now, since the Allatoona Reservoir was installed and actually went into the train's distracting me, sorry. Oh, look, a train, sorry. Back in 1950. Of the majority of they're underwater or they're very inaccessible for me to get to. And my primary role as a cultural resource, lead of the cultural resource program, is to go out, do frequent inspections. And we have 66 sites in particular that we check into on an annual basis for the sake of making sure there's no theft, vandalism, even environmental like storm damage or erosion. And so we will go out and I lost my train of thought, I'm so sorry. We'll go out and we'll see if there's any issues that need to be documented. If they're significant enough, we report those to our district archaeologist, who will then figure out what we need to do in terms of remediation and getting that site back to restoration. And so...
What are the percentages of the 66 sites that would be villages and mining sites?
So no, that's a great question. Yeah. And I can't give you percentages, but I can give you, I'm going to cover on them. The furnaces, for example, we're going to go over them, and many of you know Cooper's Furnace over here at the day use area, and we have 3 more that are in Bartow County. So I can't give you a percentage. I'd say all of them are significant. No, that's... That's a good question. But to break it down, he's a numbers guy, so, you know, that's okay. That's a good question. No, that's fine. That's fine. I can't break it down percentage-wise. But I think you'll get the gist of it when we go through it. Yes?
We're not lifers. So Lake Allatoona, what was here before the lake?
Okay.
Times like this where the lake is smaller, the water level is lower, do some of these places become exposed?
Yes, they do. We do have some. Mm-hmm.
Is there a point during this time then, is there archaeological work done, or is surveys be done?
At-
Where you can see it?
So the surveys have already been completed. There's nothing that's actually currently going on, but good question about with the lake levels dropping. I mean, we've had a significant rainfall and we are well above where we're supposed to be in terms of levels at this time of the year. But they do get exposed. There are certain areas, some I can disclose because they're visually there and you can't help but not, you're going to see it. But others we like to kind of keep on the down low for the sake of preservation. But I can tell you, for example, if you ever do come out towards our project office, we have a couple of day use areas over there. For example, Cooper Branch number 1. If you park in the day use area, you'll see an island directly across from our boathouse, as well as the ramp that our visitors use. And that becomes interlocked to the main land when the water levels drop, and there's an actual home site that's actually out there. So it's not just, you know, of course, the Native American villages or everything else. We have home sites. We've got cemeteries and graveyards and grave sites, milling sites, mining sites like you were talking about, and the Native American fishing weirs. And so I'm going to let you get in touch with me, and I really will give you the percentage of that. That's the science side of me. So we're gonna go over this list, and I'm just gonna do oh look, there's pictures, just like the train, because that's how I am. I like my pictures with my facts. So we're gonna kind of go in a timeline. We'll start with Native Americans and we'll progress forward to where we are present day. So for the Native American sites, one of the most recent findings, I can't give you to date when it was, there is a village that was there for a substantial amount of time based on what the archaeological digs found in layer by layer. They actually found artifacts per different periods of time. And that site is at the convergence of the Stamp and Boston Creek, which is over in White. That's the north side of the lake in Bartow County. But it's pretty interesting what they had found. And like I mentioned, I don't think I mentioned it. The majority of artifacts are curated at the University of Georgia. However, we do have a museum at our visitor center, so please feel free to stop by Monday through Friday, 8 to 4 o'clock. Lots of stuff to learn in our museum and lots of things to see, including some of the artifacts like this, which was found at that site, the pottery. And I think they're saying it was the Cartersville period, but they're not entirely sure based off of the article that I found from archaeologists from UGA. But we actually have these on site if you want to come and check them out. Yes, ma'am.
I'm not that familiar with the terms for those periods, the Cartersville, the Savannah, the other ones you had up there.
It's essentially time frames. So again, I'm a biologist, so I'm not really, that's where I always joke with Trey, and I tell him my husband is the historian who's also a park ranger, and he can actually break those down for you. But significantly, it's to show that that village was there for quite a while. So those periods, if anybody is a historian, how long would a period be? Yeah, essentially. So that tells you how well established that area was and what a significant find this was. But these two pieces are at our museum. One of the most sensitive topics and one of the most touching ones for me, for Native Americans, is over in Cherokee County, and that is the Sixes Village. And the Sixes Village was part of the Cherokee Nation, and it became an encampment and what was called a roundup area for making their way on the Trail of Tears towards Oklahoma. There are theories that I read up on that say the reason why that area was chosen as an encampment site was due to the Cherokee people. I think they had 4 or 5 gold mine area or sites that they maintain, including Blankets Creek, which is also known as Cherokee Gold Mine, up in it's down in the southern part in Cherokee County. So if you all have heard of the town of the Sixes and this and that, that's where that all came from. So Bridge Mill is a big community subdivision out in that area. They're just sporadic all within that area of what was called the Sixes Village. But before I go on, did anybody have any other questions on that one? Okay.
Are those sites labeled or visitable or?
There are markers, but I don't think specifically, it comes down to that. But I think there is a National Historic Register marker out somewhere in the Sixes but not particularly within that village itself or where that village formerly was.
Label it specifically.
Right.
By the way, I'm Wesley Thomas with the Trail Tears Association. Don't label it specifically because we have too many people trying to do it.
The wrong people. Right.
I mean, instead of revering what was there,
Unfortunately. And I thought this one is also displayed at our museum. It's a soapstone that was used as cookware or cooking vessels. And this was also found in the Little River area. I think this one was submerged when they were I should say well before actually the reservoir. This was actually dug up before the reservoir was installed. And like I said, the majority of these sites, including Native American sites, are now submerged, and I don't have a diver certificate. So I'm not going to do inspections underwater. Sorry, guys. But so we'll move forward in the timeline and go to the historic town of Etowah. How many of you are familiar with that? Of course. Yeah, the lifers, they all rose their hand. No. So this town was basically the name of Etowah. Nobody's entirely sure where that name came from. There's a lot of theories. My former chief has now gone off, my chief ranger has gone off to Lanier, and he's another history buff, but he has the theories of how they came up with that name. Do any of you recall? Nobody? It's a good question. We'll all look that up together. Right. The sound. Right. There you go. So this town basically was an industrial complex, and it was essentially created by Mark Anthony Cooper in the 1840s, hence Cooper's Furnace, where most of you, or some of you, if you have not gone, that's a day-use area, and it has the iron furnace there still intact today. And that's one of those places, of course, that we can't hide from the general public. So. And basically, this town, it had the blast furnace and foundry, which I just mentioned, the machinery to produce the rails and the spikes, it had a flour mill, and this is an actual rendering and picture back in the day, and you can actually, oh yeah, I can point, sorry, I think, yeah, right here is the actual flour mill and what it would look like, and I've got some pictures of ruins I'm going to show you shortly where you can actually see that flour mill too. It was also a community, and it had the post office, church, schoolhouse, store, bank, everything you need to have a functioning community. And so, but particularly the town surrounded itself around the iron ore mining and from the surrounding hills. And they were in their prime in the 1850s. And Cooper also sold his goods that he produced from those mills and mines worldwide. And of course, Cooper's Furnace is a big contributor to the expansion of the railroad that was in the area. Now we'll move forward, just a little bit more forward, to the town of Etowah during the Civil War. So iron products, they started making supplies that were more deemed for the war at that time. They stopped any other supplies and productions that they were making with the iron. And then, of course, that railroad, aside from transporting goods and supplies, it mostly transported the soldiers during the war in the area. And if you look, I'm going to try this pointer. Here we go. This is an actual photograph of the railroad crossing over the Etowah River back in the day. And this is basically all that's left are the pilings. Of course, the railroad is no longer there. For many of you, you know exactly where that is. For anybody, and you'll see those pilings there, or as you drive in. I have no comment, because when I found out about that, but it'll take care of itself. But I didn't say that. I know you're recording, so yeah. Yes, it is. Yeah, so that really is the industrial center portion of it, but the town actually continued to, prior to where the reservoir is, it was more of a river system that ran through. And right now, anything that still remains after the war and after the battle in May of 1864, the Union pretty much burned down the city or the town. And there's ruins that remain. And whatever does remain is submerged. Anything else that was on land still before the construction of the dam, you're not going to see anymore, except for the furnace itself. But that's a good question. And then for all of you history people, I'm going to start it and then I'm going to stop it. It played a primary role over at the furnace for the great locomotive chase. Who knows that? I knew you were going to raise your hand. I know you. And so essentially what happened was there was a very small mining locomotive called the Yona. And that was commandeered by the engineer who drove the General, the locomotive, the General. And there was a chase between the General and the locomotive, the Texas, which was running north, and they were trying to basically destroy the supply chains going up and onward towards Chattanooga. And there was a big chase that ensued to put a stop to it and keep them from destroying the supply line during the war. So thank you. Go ahead and add.
I have a question.
Yes.
This is the Union version of the town. Would that be different parts of the city, or what would that be?
That was, yeah. All righty. And then, like I mentioned, these are some of the photos of that were taken. We have a lot of them, but I really liked these. This is that flour mill in that picture I showed you. And what they assumed, this is no longer here. These are underwater now, like you were asking about. But this was actually at the Day-Use area, and they are presuming and assuming that the mill and what was left of it went bye-bye during the construction of the dam. Again, remember that Historical Preservation Act was 1966. The dam was in construction in 1947 to 1950. It happens. Some people make mistakes, but we learn from our mistakes. So, but they think that was inside of Cooper's Furnace. If you were to drive past the restroom, as if you're going to look at the dam, there's like a staging area that was used for the construction of the dam, and that's where they assume that it was. And then we're moving forward now to the Battle of Allatoona Pass. And this is the location for the Allatoona Pass battlefield. Somebody mentioned that earlier. There was somebody in here that they hiked there. You guys hiked there or walked there, right? And so this is an original photo of the railroad line going through. This was used on both sides of the war as a supply line. And basically the battle began on October 5th, or it took place on October 5th, 1864, when the Confederates were trying to take over and cut the supply line for the Union side. 1,500 casualties total for both sides. And I've got some pictures to show you kind of a before and after. The Star Fort, which there's a location for it. If you guys ever get some time, go out to Allatoona Pass. It's beautiful out there. The Star Fort was constructed as 6-foot-high earthworks, and the trenches were about 6 foot deep, and they used railroad ties to actually form the walls going outside, making a point, hence star-shaped point, hence the name Star Fort. And if you look at it today, this is what it looks like. So those 6-foot trenches, pictures don't really do justice and you can't tell, but you can see the leaf litter in here and this indentation in the earth. That's where the existing trenches still are. And then, of course, this area is where the fort was, and this is where the old railroad passed through, and which is now what you guys walk on when you take your walks over there. And then asking about those mining sites. So we had 4 confirmed, and I know there's more, but the ones that are still standing today are Cooper's Furnace, Donaldson Furnace, and Lewis Furnace. And then, of course, Allatoona Furnace, it's no longer, and if it was, it would be underwater near Bethany Bridge. During construction of that bridge is when the remnants of that furnace became no more. But an interesting fact is that while they were bulldozing and preparing for the bridge, there was a intact full pottery piece, and it was beautiful, and it's actually at display at our museum if you ever want to see it. And of course that halted things for a while, and then everybody's got to play the follow the rules and regulations game. And so Donaldson Furnace, I don't know his first name, but if there's a history buff out there that knows it, he constructed this furnace and it never was used. His purpose was to keep his son out of the war, and basically his son helped him slowly construct that furnace that would have been used, of course, for the iron mining for purposes for the war, but it was never used. The Lewis Furnace, I don't know that location. I have yet to be out or go out to actually do inspections out on that area. Does anybody know?
I think it's off of Bell's Ferry Road.
Okay.
Upper Stamp Creek.
Yeah, there's like a road out there that's labeled Furnace, something like that, if you follow that.
Well, you can't get any more obvious than that, I guess. Well, there's your answer.
Donaldson is on Stamp Creek.
Right.
Wildlife management area.
Right.
But there's also a furnace behind the check-in station there
Right.
for the management area. There's another one.
There's quite a few in Bartow County alone.
There's 3 or 4 in the management.
And those are just outside our boundary lines from our property. Yeah. And moving on to some more mining sites, the gold mines. Remember I mentioned with the Trail of Tears, the Cherokee Gold Mine, which is found at Blankets Creek. And the picture on the left is when it was in function and they were working with it, which was dated back about 1854. And then the photo on the right are the ruins. There are a lot of ruins. There's a north and a south portion of the actual whole entire mining field. Don't go out there, I'll be watching you. And I think some people actually do the gold mining and stuff like that, but you get a permit for it, and it's just for fun, essentially. You're not going to find anything, guys, I'm sorry. And another milling site is Rope Mill, hence it got its name from producing cotton ropes that were used as plow lines and for well water buckets. And of course, it was powered by the flow of the Etowah River and the tributaries from Noonday Creek, as well as Little River. Yeah, you guys can see that. You can go out there and actually see that if you're ever interested. Can't hide that from you guys, sorry. Oh, somebody taking a picture? If you need me to go back? Okay, all right, good. All right. And this is an interesting one. This milling site is out in Cherokee in the Canton area. It's the McCandless Dam and Ferry. So the mill, it was washed away in a flood, and the remains are actually still seen if you ever go to Bolin Park in Canton. You can see that on the opposite side of Etowah River, it's in the embankment. So in 2007, ironically, when my husband first started working for the Corps of Engineers, the gear fell out of that riverbank. And Cherokee County Historical Society reached out to us for permission to move that, again, for the sake and the purpose of protecting and making sure there's no theft or vandalism. And we approved that, and we assisted them, and Cherokee County moved that to its Rock Barn Historical Site, and that's off of Marietta Highway in Canton. If you're ever interested in seeing it, it's kind of cool. And then moving on to grave sites and cemeteries, which some of us talked about before the meeting, and this young lady here in the front has family in the Chitwood Cemetery, which is actually found at Stamp Creek Campground. So when you go past the gatehouse, it's up on the hill on the left-hand side, and it's obscured and most people don't know about it. And I was telling her, even our rangers, a lot of the new ones have no idea. They just drive in, and you have to point it out in order to actually see it. And then if some of you have ever camped at McKinney, it's fenced out and it's on the back portion of the lake up near the shoreline. In the back campsites is the McKinney grave site. And then, of course, if you've ever camped at Sweetwater Campground, this is up in the front. So there's this monument that's right here. I'm not good at this. Don't think I can throw a baseball either. And there's actually little markers that are kind of behind this site that are actually grave sites. So if you ever camp out there or an off season when we're not, I was telling some of you during off season, and we really don't condone it or promote it, but if you ever like taking walks, you can walk around, park in the overflow site and walk in the campgrounds, you know, if you want to use that for hiking or walking purposes, and feel free to check those out. Or if you camp, you can check them out too. And then we have, whoops, not yet. There we go. We've got some more grave sites that are on our leased areas as well as privately owned, but we help maintain them. And then there's Bethany Cemetery, which is in Red Top Mountain State Park. You cross over the bridge and you can park at their pavilion, and it's right over in that parking area over there. And they mostly maintain it, but we still go out and do our inspections. Likewise with the Goodson Cemetery, which is off of Stamp Creek as well.
These cemeteries, was they built for a church being there, was they built by a family, or was there a town there?
For the Goodson one in particular, or all of the above? All of the above. So all of the above.
Like there's a whole bunch.
Yeah, and we've even got.
Right, that we go by a lot, because we didn't live here.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's one right down the road on Old 41 here, that they building a whole bunch of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a cemetery down there on the left as you go down before you get to Emerson.
Mm-hmm.
And the woods right there, where doing that whole construction.
Yeah, yeah.
And one time, we went by there one time and they went in there and somebody really cleaned it out.
Yeah.
All the tombstones about. And I think it's right. But in general, I wonder where all these cemeteries came from.
Right. No, and that's a good question. And the majority of them are family cemeteries. Some are from old churches as well. One, for example, and it's off of Stamp Creek, and it's over, there's a DNR kind of holding station kind of thing for DNR. And I think he was Brigadier General, I want to say, Wolford. He is that's a family name in this area. And I think he has an ancestor that's actually buried at a grave site in Cass somewhere as well. So yeah, and it's keeping, that's why I said a lot of you people are from this area and have lineage and families that go back this far, which is fascinating. And unfortunately over at Goodson not too long ago, I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago, there was some theft and vandalism at the grave site. And that's why we help them out. I mean, they're close to us, they're pretty much on us, so we do what we can to help out too. But
Bethany was a church.
Bethany was a church, yes ma'am. And then of course now we're Allatoona. Guess what? That's a historic place. That's an historic structure and site and area, and we do qualify for the National Historic Register for a lot of things, but it would place a more stringent guidelines. It would place more issues where we couldn't have the public around them, and it's a very lengthy process to go through. So although we have a lot of places that qualify, we don't feel like doing it. But essentially, this picture on the left-hand side is kind of the groundbreaking ceremony, and I think, Trey, you've got that in the display. And a couple of months ago, we gave a presentation on the history of the dam itself. And then on the right-hand side, this is looking as if you were over at Riverside, up on the hilltop, looking down. That's our project office, or where it would be. There's an overlook that's over here. This is where the dam and powerhouse would be, and this is where Cooper's Furnace Day Use is. And then this is construction of the dam and the powerhouse. And that's the completion. And then present day, that one was taken a few years ago. And that pretty much concludes.
Did you ever get tours of that?
They used to.
I remember years ago, the doors were Michael walk in and look.
Before 9/11, of course. Yeah.
Emerald Valley Historical Society gave tours last fall.
That's right.
For members.
So, yeah, if you're a member, they'll usually, any kind of society or membership somewhere, something that's community related, like here with the museum itself, they'll collaborate and put together with the powerhouse actual tours. But you're right, before 9/11, you used to be able to walk across freely if you wanted to and go run up and down those stairs that are over on Riverside, and can't do that anymore. Yeah, yeah. But, oh, go ahead.
We were lucky that the furnace was saved
Yeah,
from the building of the dam. I mean, it's really close.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's holding fairly well. So, and yeah, if you ever hike back over there, and you guys said you were interested in walks directly behind Cooper's Furnace, it's now a hiking trail, is the old railroad bed, if you've all ever been there. Yes, sir? Yes.
I want to try to make this a simple question.
Okay.
I've got a lot of thoughts about the question, so I'm going to ask it this way.
Okay.
When I hear a Corps of Engineers, I'm thinking government, federal government.
Right. Oh, no, I'm... Yes.
Marco County.
Yes.
I always thought, I mean, we've lived there over 20 years, that the Corps of Engineers called the shots mostly, for the most part, on the dam, on the lake, on the dam. Not all places, not Gatewood, because that's where I'll put in.
Right.
That's a little complicated, because Gatewood is owned by the county, is that correct?
That's correct. It's leased, it's not owned, we lease to them because it is on core property. Right.
So my real question I'm getting to,
Mm-hmm.
technically, who owns Lake Allatoona? Is it the federal government, since you run it? If you run something, does that mean you own it?
So essentially we own it, yes. But as far as laws and regulation, environmental and onward for people who are out there recreating, we have jurisdiction on it, as well as the state. DNR actually runs waters of the state. Allatoona is waters of the state, so therefore they also on the water itself have jurisdiction. And then, for example, with Gatewood, we lease to them. It's on us. We have jurisdiction there too. We don't, like for example, when we're patrolling in the summer months, we typically don't go out there. We let that whoever's managing maintain unless they actually need us to come out for assistance. Does that kind of? Yeah. So yeah, it's a good question because it goes all the way from federal all the way down to county. But yeah, primarily we oversee everything. Then whoever it's leased out to is secondary, and then tertiary, if that makes sense.
The past doesn't get you all up.
That's correct. So anytime you see this at one of the day use areas, that annual pass that we that you guys purchase online or whenever you come on in, that's where you can use them. And it's not just at our lake; it's any of the Corps Engineers lakes nationwide. Or you can do like my husband and I do, and we actually have the annual interagency pass, and we use it because we travel a lot. Because he's trying to see when I'm home and not, because he was asking me. So I'm just kidding. But we actually use that, and you can get into Corps of Engineers, you can get into National Park Service, BLM, et cetera. So,
Yeah, I got
yeah.
one of those tires. It's got a goat on it. I'm assuming it'd be an old goat.
I don't know. If I could design the card, I would put something else on it, I bet, yeah, no. But.
Is your main office in Alabama, or is it in Savannah?
So our district office that we have is in Mobile, Alabama. Our division, so we have, in our division, we have several districts under that. And our division's out here in Atlanta. It's the office out in Atlanta, yes. It's at our office. So where I pointed on that hill, so if you actually go out onto 20, go under 75, take a right onto 20 Spur where you see the Wendy's and the gas station that's right there. Take that all the way to the end and up the hill. And then the museum is open Monday through Friday, 8 to 4 p.m.
Where they have a barge that they...
Dredging.
Dredging?
Yes.
Is that a lease from the Corps to that company?
So that's a contract that we have that runs 5 years. That's the other program I run. I babysit them and make sure that they are staying in environmental compliance. And I do inspections over through Blankenship, who has the contract right now. And they have 2 locations over at Little River, and that's where their staging area is, where they actually do their sales for the sand that they refine. Right. And then you've probably seen before you get to the bridge at Knox, that's the junk sand, and sometimes you'll see people over there right. shoveling for landscape purposes or whatever.
So they're going to widen Highway 20.
Mm-hmm.
Is there going to be another bridge built right beside the existing Knox Bridge, or are they going to try to go across?
That's a great question, and I know that my chief on land management side, he gets on monthly meetings with Georgia DOT, and that's really the go-to to see what their plans are in terms, but I would imagine they would have some kind of secondary or something, because that's cutting off Canton and a lot of to and from work traffic. I have several rangers that actually come from that area, and they sure as heck ain't going to go around to the south and back up.
I heard
so.
At one point that the little store, Sweetwater store,
Mm-hmm.
that they were going to go straight right there.
That's what I heard, but I'm not sure what their plans are on that, and I'm not sure when that actually is supposed to start either. But I did hear about the expansion, and I'm sure it has a lot to do, if you go on the Canton side of 20, how they're taking that from a 2 to a 6-lane road. Because I used to work out in Lanier, and I'm glad I'm not in that mess right now. Yeah. So.
We were told recently that you can go online and see the final project.
Probably. It has to be public information. So, yes, ma'am.
When you first introduced yourself, I realized, your husband is the leader of some of the tours and hikes that I've been on around the Red Top here.
Nope. So that's state. So that's Red Park State Park. We lease to Red Top Mountain State Park. And my husband, he's federal. He's one of us, and he's a lead ranger over at the Corps of Engineers. And he's a desk jockey now. So that's what I call it. He calls it. I've been put out to pasture, is what he says. So yeah. And then I'm still working. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question about what and how it works. When you see some of these old historical sites, I always wonder, when do we get to a point with the old historical site? And who decides it? It says, okay, you've got everything from there, now life goes on. You use this property for something new. How is that kind of thing handled?
That's a good question, and it's what happens is once it's registered, and particularly when it's on federal lands, it is federally protected. So nothing can change, because in particular, when I was showing you the National Historic Register, you have to have a property that has maintained and not been altered in any way, and there's other criteria that follows it. Aside from being 50 years or older, that location, that structure, that artifact, whatever it is, becomes federally protected. And so if you're saying, okay, we've had enough of looking at this furnace at Cooper's Furnace, can you please get rid of it? It's ruining my view of the river. No, you can't. It stays federally protected indefinitely.
That's where I don't really stick out in that argument here, because technically any place and every place has some historical value.
Sure, and that's what happens when you're even if you're not on federal or tribal lands. For example, like with GDOT, they actually have to go through a stringent environmental assessment and EIS, They have cultural background, people with cultural backgrounds, science backgrounds, and they all have to do assessments before any kind of construction or alterations can take place. And they will go out and do like a phase 1 study to see if there's anything below the earth that they may need to protect before they move forward.
My one-man experience with this type of thing is the church that I grew up in downtown Baltimore. We did some extensive repair work.
Mhm.
They got me doing it the way that they wanted to do it because
Because of it.
awful lot of history in the church. They no longer wanted to be on the National Registry, that they had to pay for brand new copper roof and, you know, so they-
Because that takes away from the original foundation and structure and, yeah,
But they still need a new roof.
right,
And the copper roof is beyond their grasp financially.
right,
And this caused a lot of tension in the church. It was a rough time for them,
right.
till they figured out what to do and what they did. It was a mess.
So when all was said and done, were they able to find that compromise and, or whatever actually became of that?
Yeah, it was kind of a compromise where the government was here and the church was here and the compromise was here.
Right,
You know, it was just a stalemate.
right,
Yes.
right,
That's why, so
yeah.
it really was a mess.
Yes, sir.
Can federal land be used for anything else than what it was designed for?
So,
The reason I say that is because the road, Old 41, that goes through Kennesaw Mountain right now, is fixing to build, they're building 2 roundabouts. And who says that they can do that on federal land, and you say we can't alter anything, because once it's there, it should be reserved for exactly what it is. But then the state comes along and says, oh no, we want to do this and we want to do that, and we want to take these trees down and all of that. And what you're saying is one thing, but then what the politicians do is something else.
right,
So I'm saying, if Cook was Furnace, one day down the road, where you and I probably might be gone, if some yo-yo out there says, I don't like the view, and they get enough politicians, they might do away with Cookers, because what you're saying is one thing, and I agree with what you're saying 100%, but what we see is something else.
right. So this is a roadway that they're putting through, so you have the structure versus a roadway actually going through. Is it actually on an actual battleground?
It's
From the
gonna be-
battlefield?
It's gonna be on that battlefield.
It's on the battleground.
State road,
Huh?
it's a state road and they can do whatever.
Right,
That's right, but you're right.
Right.
They can take down all
Right.
the trees along that and build 2 big roundabouts and, without any trouble. So I'm agreeing, I'm not fussing, I'm just
That's
agreeing
right.
with what you're saying.
Right.
But it don't hold true. If somebody wants to do something, immediately, if you get enough money behind something, it'll move.
money
back.
talks, money talks. And so do gold mines too, when they want to push certain people out and away, so, yeah, it's the unfortunate.
Yeah.
What happened in, I'm sorry?
That's where we from.
Okay.
They moved the whole town out to the Savannah Road. It's like they have built the atomic bomb.
Right,
But isn't this about the value of preservation versus development?
yeah,
Not the same thing.
And so-
Sometimes they don't, you can't meet in the middle. There's
right.
no mediation.
And it is difficult, and oftentimes they do end up with that roadblock when they're going through that 106 process that I was telling you all about, unfortunately. But yeah, it's how much can we preserve? And then how much are we supposed to actually deal with the population growths and expansions? And, you know, I mean, that's honestly, and I'm sorry I can't answer that because that's over my head. I'm not a poli-sci major, so, you know, but I'm right with you on the preservation.
Influence on it.
Right,
A guy sits in the office somewhere with another group of guys and sit down and say, this is what we're gonna do, but the public, us, and you, don't have any say in it.
well, there are public meetings, and there are, and then aside,
It's like cross.
but yeah, okay, I'll give you that. But there's also aside from the federal government, we're not the only ones that get the say so. There's the tribal councils, there's the you guys with the History Museum, they have a say-so too. Anybody who's there for that purpose of preservation, and that's what those public meetings actually entail, and that's why we have those state officers too that will actually initiate and get as many people involved, because we need everybody's input on who it's going to affect, not just us.
In the daytime, everybody's working.
Right.
So you
That's
go and you got 10 people there, and you should have 10,000, but you got 10 people there.
right.
But you can make your voice heard.
That's right.
Go ahead.
No, because I don't want to step on her.
Well, no. Good lady.
We're going to take this to your brew house, okay? Everybody, let's go.
You don't wait for that.
A little bit early for us.
I work through the GVOT to preserve historic sites. They can't do any construction unless they send me notification.
I hope they send you notification.
Yep.
Because they may have heard from you all in a public meeting that there's something historically there. So then they come to me and they ask me to confirm before they can do construction. The big problem is, does the state got government money from our illustrious politicians in Washington DC to improve roads throughout Georgia? One of the worst roads I have seen that was a total waste was Highway 41. It parallels 75 going north. They both parallel each other. I went to a meeting in Ringgold not too long ago, and it was 5 o'clock, and there wasn't a soul on 41. But it was a 4-lane road.
41 was here first.
But nobody drives it. They all
Because
live
the other
in 75.
Unless there's an accident, then they go on to 41. So, yeah.
That's part of the issue, is that the state gets money to build all these new roads. And right now, it's for these roundabouts. And they've already killed 2 of them.
Well, there was a faction.
Yeah. I saw her
I
right.
have a quick question.
Yes.
So the historic, sites, I know you can look those up online,
Mhm.
they list them all. Are the surveys for public record as well?
No.
Or you guys keep that?
That's us. That's in that historic properties management plan. That's between us and the archaeologists. So. But yes, I mean, and at the same token, you're not going to see all of those sites online, but a majority of them, because there's those advocates, historians, archaeologists.
Do they survey them, or do they, like, the underwater ones, will they ever go back? Like, my.
I've never seen anybody go out to those.
All the fishing people go out and get stuck on the, you know.
Well, it's deep enough.
What are we digging up with our motors?
Right.
Not with your blade.
And those areas, any area that would be directly on the shoreline that would be exposed year-round, or when the water levels go down, they are protected. And the majority of them are far enough in or well submerged in deep enough waters that when the water recedes in the wintertime, they are not affected. Right. And I'm not going to learn how to dive to go and check those out. This gentleman.
I have 2 quick questions. Is there a map or a layout of how the train track used to run through?
There is something, yeah.
At the Keenan Research Center,
Yeah.
there's a whole collection. Sorry, I did my.
No,
I did
that's
my
fine. That's great.
For my master's.
No.
There,
Oh, great.
There's a specific collection where Historical Society did come out while the dam was building and documented almost everything around Allatoona Lake. It's at the Keenan Research Center at the Allatoona History Center. They have
I've seen it. Yeah, I've been there. Yeah.
collections
Yeah.
where they document Allatoona past history.
Good.
And then,
That's
you
okay.
said several spots are actually eligible to be a higher level of, I guess, the person serving them, but you guys choose not to because you would hold it back from the public. What would be the benefits of actually having that classification?
It's our classification, and it's just something that we've seen because of previous incidences or their attempts. Oh, for the
Sorry,
register?
the national, you said you choose not to do that for a lot of the sites up here because they want to take people away.
We would have to get rid of, for example, if we went and registered Cooper's furnace, the actual furnace, we would actually have to take that day use away and for preservation, right? And there would be more strict guidelines on, because if you go out there now, we have signs that say, please don't walk past this sign and go up to the furnace, but people still do it anyway. Yeah. And people have used to climb, and there was actually back in the 60s, there's a photograph of like this biker club that went out there, and they're all like climbing all over it, and they have their bikes parked around, like, look at me and my bike, and yeah. So, yeah, we don't want to do that, so.
I have one question.
Okay, I will do you, and then you. Go ahead.
For those that might not know, why do y'all let the lake down so far? But you can answer that.
Yes.
And it seems to me, and who says that it goes down 10 feet and not 9 feet or 11 feet? Who says that it goes down to this certain level every year? And why do you do that? And because it just kind of takes away from everything, especially if you're out boating and certain
Right.
areas. But people need to know why you do that.
We get asked that every year.
It goes down to this level, and there's any argument about leaving it at that level.
So the primary purpose is not for recreation, it is flood control. There's this little town called Rome down the Etowah River, and we have to control how much water is released and put into the Etowah to make sure, because remember, there's another river system, the Ottawa, that actually converges right there. And that actually comes down from Carter's Lake, a sister lake from the Corps of Engineers. So we have engineers that work at our powerhouses that actually determine the forecast, the rain events, everything that's going on. For example, we have not released enough water, and essentially that's why it looks like we're almost at full pool for that sake primarily. And if we let out too much, they're going to flood during rain events. So they have to time it just so, they're the engineers, to make sure that we prevent that, and that's the number one use. Recreation is on the bottom of the list of why we actually have that reservoir there. And when it gets too low, we actually drop it in the winter time to prepare for season thaws and everything that's coming on the north side of Etowah River and actually coming out, as well as all the tributaries and the water flow. We have to control what's coming on the north side into that system, into our reservoir as well. So we drop that enough, and it's past the 15th. Well, if we didn't have all this rain, our levels will start to, at January 15th every year, we have it start to go up until it reaches full pool of 840. So I hope that helps.
A lot of people don't know that.
Right. Yeah, and we get asked that all the time.
I found that out a long time ago because when we first moved here, I said, God, man, I'm glad I don't have a boat up here. Because it would be dry dock half the year. And
that's why I don't like I didn't say I don't like it. I said I'm so glad I don't do shoreline anymore, which was another program, especially with the homeowners in their docks and trying to chase water, and it's a headache. And trying to get them, when they're chasing water, to bring their dock back when the water is back up again. So yeah, it's just all about education and informing and asking those questions. That's why we're here. So yeah,
thank you so much.
You're welcome. Yes, ma'am.
You said that you are primarily a biologist.
Yes.
Can you tell us something related to biology with the lake and the dam that has been affected or changed because of the dam or because of like the water levels?
Well, one of the biggest, and you probably already know, is the darter fish. Of course you do. I know you do. And that actually, with the diversion and the creation of the reservoir, everything changes ecosystem-wise. But as much as everything changes anthropogenically, human influence, Mother Nature also has a way of adapting to whatever is presented to itself again. So the ecosystem's reestablished. Habitats may change a little bit and alter a little bit, but essentially Mother Nature actually prevails. And in this situation, there hasn't been any implications really that have been recorded that have been detrimental to any other kind of species in terms of when they put this lake in 70 years ago. Yes.
I'm wondering, is there any discussion or consideration to artifacts from the Indians, from the Cherokee and all, talk about resending or sending those back to the Cherokee? Are there discussions going on?
That's a good question. And if it is, it's with, I saw repatriation and, right.
Anything from that you have from the Lake Allatoona?
From us on our level, me down here, I'm the lowly ranger. So if that is to take place, in fact, it would be again the appropriate liaisons, everybody, they will get together with the archaeologists from UGA as well as in our district office at Mobile. And then, of course, the discussions would take place between them. We have no say-so at this level.
So. I just mentioned, we're from, before getting smart and coming down to the Atlantic area, we live in,
I don't know about that. No, I'm just kidding.
we live in Rochester, New York.
Okay.
And the Erie Canal, my first thought was, I saw the water level drop down here in the winter, but there the Erie Canal is closed off on the end and they drain it from winter. That gives them during the winter time, because it gets frozen anyway. They go through, they clear out the old cars, they go out, they dig up the bodies, all the junk, as well as fixing the locks.
Right.
Now during winter, so it is drained down to that much, and then refilled. So I was wondering again, was this a time of maintenance on the dam? Take this opportunity now or maintenance.
It's a continuous maintenance year round, and they have their own schedule on what they do to make sure and ensure of safety and public safety. But we take advantage of it from the biological standpoint. I do a lot of erosion control, and I actually, this is on the biology side, I know, wrong subject, but we go out in the winter months and we actually drop in fish habitats that we create, from recycled live Christmas trees to invasive bamboo. We actually create little cages with Christmas trees and drop them in the water in the deeper areas, as well as on February 4th, I'm going out with DNR to plant button bushes that I grow in our hoop house for shoreline stabilization as well as fish habitat. So we have other things aside from, with the dam that we do in this season when the water levels are low. While that's going on, we're going to do this stuff too. Exactly. Okay. Yeah. I have to go up there now.
Not in winter.
Not in winter. I agree.
And you have my Christmas tree, so
I saw you left your lights on, you left your ornaments on. That's right.
Don't tell his wife.
That's right. Thank you very
I saw
much.
the news where the Columbia River, they gonna take a dam out on the Columbia River, a big dam that they built. They gonna take the whole dam out. If I'm right, in here and there.
I have no idea about that. That's Walla Walla District. So, yeah.
That's true, then it helps the salmon be able to get back up the stream.
They're gonna take the whole dam out.
Right.
They're doing that all over the Northwest.
Yeah.
Linda, we thank you for being
Thank
here.
you, Trey. Thank you all. Thank you.